I'm Natalie Walton, and this is Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. Each week, I'm here to share with you some of the biggest lessons I've learned during my career and life. Some of them I wish I'd learned a lot sooner because they would have saved me a huge amount of time, stress, and even money. Many of these ideas could have accelerated my journey as a creative and business owner. I also feature interviews with inspiring creatives, entrepreneurs, and experts to help you focus on what's most important in your life. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different and interview my husband, Daniel Rollston, who has a wealth of knowledge and experience in both business and marketing. And we're going to talk about one of the questions that I get asked most often. It is, how do I do all the things that I do? And the answer you will soon find out. But first, I want to let you know about a free ebook that I've created. It's for anyone who wants to learn how to create a home you love and visual stories that connect and create impact. 7 Days, Your Guide to Styling Success is available for free to anyone who visits my website, nataliewalton.com. Just fill out the sign-up form and you'll get it delivered direct to your inbox. Styling changed my life and it can do the same for you. So if you'd like to create a career doing what you love or enhance the experience of your home, or both, go to my website where you can download this free ebook. I can't wait to share it with you. And please hashtag the Styling Masterclass with what you create. Hello everyone. Today I thought I would do something a little bit different. As many of you will know, I run a business, Imprint House, and I run it with my husband, Daniel Rollston. And I get asked a lot, how do I do all the things that I do? Well, the simple answer to that is that I have Daniel as my husband, and we really work as a team together. So we work as a team as parents. We're very much co-parents with our children. And Daniel, at the moment, we go through phases. And at the moment, Daniel is very much responsible he often does drops the kids off at the school bus, picks them up. He makes most of our meals at the moment and does school lunch boxes. I probably look after the house a little bit more and laundry and things like that. But we very much are co-parents. We very much share the responsibilities within our own home. And with all the business aspects of the different things that I do, whether it's running my shop Imprint House or if it's running my courses, Daniel looks after all the administration side of things, all of the financial side of things. And that's the same that goes with our house and our property and our finances too. So that is a huge reason why I'm able to do all the things that I do, because I'm not doing absolutely everything at home, plus trying to run a business as well. And I'm not doing everything in my business. I'm doing kind of the fun stuff, or that, at least I think of it as the fun stuff. The creative side of things, very much looking after the creative direction, but he deals with suppliers and the bookkeepers and all of that side. Another big reason why I wanted to interview Daniel and get you to meet him is because I learned so much from him, and I really bounce off a lot of ideas in relation to my own businesses. And he has a wealth of business experience. So he studied business, he has worked in different industries, and he's also created a business. He did that with my stepfather, and they sold it. And it was ended up being a successful venture. So that is also part of the reason why we're able to do what we do. So I'm not going to introduce him anymore. I thought that I would run a few questions past him that I ask all of my guests, and you can kind of meet him and learn a little bit more about him. So Daniel, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you just tell us a little bit about your childhood and how, where you grew up, and a little bit of your story before you even got to deciding what type of career you would have? Because I always think that the sort of childhood we have really informs the person that we become and our life journeys, as it were.
Good question. I grew up in the country. So until I was 12, I lived in 2 different properties in country Victoria, up near Mount Buller, where the ski fields are. And I was really quite lucky in that I was able to just fossick around and play outside and invent my own games as much as possible. I didn't have a TV when I grew up. I think we first got our TV when I was about 10, and even then it was black and white. We lived on a farm. It was 130 acres, which is our second property. That was near the Strathbogie Ranges. And we were just riding bikes, making cubbies, building things, whatever it was. It was something outdoors, energetic, being creative. And my parents really, when I look at now being a parent, were pretty relaxed about it. I mean, their general attitude was they'll come home when they're hungry, which I don't know if I'm that comfortable as a parent having that attitude. I'm maybe a bit more hands-on than that, but we try and engender the same thing with our kids.
And that's something else I wanted to just touch on for this podcast episode, is that a lot of the lessons that I've learned about health and well-being are also things that I get from Daniel. I think that we seek out in our partners the parts of us that perhaps are, lacking or that we would like to be more like. And Daniel is certainly the very patient one in our family. And he's very disciplined with certain things, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. So Daniel, you had this childhood growing up in the country. Then when you hit your kind of teenage years, what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, what path did you envisage for yourself in those kind of teenage years? Did you want to go into business, or was it, did you think of something else? Did you have any sense of what you wanted to be, or what helped you decide what type of course you would do at university?
Good question. Who really knows what they want to do when they're a teenager?
Well, that's very true.
I tried all sorts of things. I remember doing work experience as a vet. That was very hands-on, and the work experience saw me go out with a country vet to help the vet remove a deceased calf from a live cow.
Oh my gosh.
So needless to say, I didn't really pursue that career. I looked at pharmacy, did some work experience in a hospital pharmacy. That wasn't really for me. I guess I kind of had an inkling that I wanted to do some kind of business, but I wasn't really sure what kind of business. And I did see, I saw a documentary. We had, one of my early jobs was doing sales for pay TV in Tasmania. And as part of that, we had the package. So we had BBC World News. And I do remember seeing a documentary about people who worked in the finance industry and how they got to being 50, and that's all they knew was finance. So if they then wanted to change career, it was then quite different, and so difficult rather. And so I thought to myself, well, I want to do something in business, but I also want to be able to have the flexibility to have a skill set that's flexible across multiple industries. And so from there, I guess my studies then led me in to study business, and I started to have a few ventures when I was at university, and have roles mainly in the sales sort of side of the business, which led me to see basically a lot of it is just having your shingle out the front. Because if you've got a vision and you've got a product and you're passionate about something, people are drawn to that. And I think once I saw that, that was a real turning point, because I saw that when we lived in England for nearly 2 years. And that then became a real turning point. And I thought, well, so that was a turning point for me. And I realized when we got back to Australia that I really had to start something. And really it was about jumping in and taking my experience and then just learning what you need to know along the way. That's probably one of the biggest lessons.
When you sort of look back, did you have any mentors in those kind of early years of business, or some of those businesses? I mean, I'm thinking of maybe Carl or some of the other people that you might have come along the way, even when you were working in England? I know there were a few kind of key figures, and if so, what kind of lessons did you learn from those people?
Yeah, I've worked in organisations that are both organised and disorganised, and I've had people who are running businesses who were workaholics, and I could see very clearly people I didn't want to be like. And then there are a few people, and Carl is one of them, he's about 10 years older than me, and he was one of my direct managers, and he just brought a real energy into the role, and sort of took away the fear that I had of management as well. And I guess by that he sort of made me realize that we're on the same side, and he was just there to to clear obstructions out of my way to help me do my job better. And so that was a good mentor in Carl. In England, I worked in the insurance industry, and we had an interesting situation in that 6 months after I joined the company, it went bust. And my little team was quite profitable. So I was in a team of about 8 people. And I was then in an office where somebody who was charged with selling the business as a going concern then sat across from me and did his negotiations over the phone. And to me, it was an incredibly eye-opening experience, because that stuff was always really inaccessible. And then here it was, and it was just a guy, and he just had a phone, and he was selling a business. And I thought, well, that's really exciting, and that's pretty easy. So I learned a lot from that. And then coming back to Australia and working with my father-in-law, he was also a great mentor in that he had to overcome obstacles in his life. He had dyslexia, and he was just so determined, just so doggedly determined. And he's probably more determined than anybody I've ever met. And he was, very successful in his life, still is. And I guess from him, I learnt about the dogged determination uh, and how to engage people. And we both have very different styles, but he was really in the vein of finding what people are interested in and what they want to do, and then just letting them go for it and clearing away the blockages so that they could really go for it and excel in their own role that they're trained for.
There are certain things that when we have conversations about business, and there are a few things that always stick in my mind when we talk about ways to approach things. And one of them that you talk about a lot is that you've just got to keep trying different things. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? Like, what are your thoughts on why that's important?
Yeah, sure. One of my early mentors had just a very simple motto, and that was that activity breeds success. So whatever you do, you have to have some kind of activity, and you just keep plugging away and have faith, because the success may come from where you anticipate, or it may come from somewhere different. But just by having the activity, then you'll be successful. And it's also important to have a business plan and be flexible in that too. So if an opportunity comes along, then you need to be able to assess whether it fits in with the plan and take advantage of it if you can.
So would you be able to share some of the other big lessons that you've learnt through the course of your career? As I mentioned, you have worked in different industries, and I think that there are probably some common themes that come up from time to time. Could you share some of those?
Yeah, sure. Well, the biggest one, I think, is that people are everything. The energy that they bring is just so, so important. And I don't just mean that they're energetic, although that's important. It's their own personal energy that they bring, and having that cohesiveness between the energy of the different people in the group. And it's probably the most important thing that you can have. Another thing is, and I've mentioned this before, is just letting people do what they're good at. And as a manager, just getting out of the way. So just saying to people, these are the boundaries. This is what we need done. These are the resources to do it. and just letting people get on with it, and then just checking in with them with a view to making sure they still have the resources to do their job and that they don't have any barriers. And that's all I focus on in terms of managing people.
Great. And I wanted to talk to you also about a little bit about, I guess, health and well-being, because I learned so much from you, and you're very passionate about living a good life in terms of, you know, your overall well-being. You're very good at self-care, probably better than I am. I have a tendency to burn the midnight oil, whereas you're very good at setting boundaries around that. Can you share a little bit about why that's important to you and what you notice, what you do on a daily basis in terms of looking after yourself, and why that's important, and what you notice if you perhaps veer off track, or what helps you come back to it?
Yeah, on a daily basis. So sleep is the most important thing. So I like to go to bed with maybe a little bit of extra time up my sleeve than the 8 hours, because we have 4 young children, and in the event that somebody wakes up or has some kind of problem sleeping, then even if I have to get up in the middle of the night, I'm still fine the next day. So I like to have that buffer in my sleep. In the morning, I wake up around 6, put the breakfast on, which is porridge and a mixture of seeds. We have probably
go and share all the different seeds that we have in our breakfast. It is a long running joke in our family that, like, our breakfasts they're a huge thing to be seen. They're amazing. God, please tell everybody all the different things we have in our breakfast.
Okay, so we start with oats, which are organic, unstabilized oats if we can, because stabilized oats have been treated in a way that extends shelf life, but also depletes nutrients out of them. So I get the porridge cooking, have a cup of tea to help wake up, and do some yoga for about 20 minutes. So that then keeps my body strong and keeps me focused. If I'm lucky and the children haven't woken up yet, then I might meditate for 20 minutes as well. So into the porridge, then we put in some chia seeds, which are really high in protein and omega-3s. And we then serve that with fresh blueberries or frozen blueberries, which are a superfood, really good for heart health. So I'm really big on eating the rainbow, they say. So foods of all different colors and types.
And we should add that those blueberries you get so Daniel loves going to the markets, and we're very lucky that we have some great farmers markets here. So they're from a local producer in this region, and Daniel knows all the market holders by name. And so they're not just like a supermarket one, but they're, as much as possible, we try and eat all of our fruit and veggies from local producers and organic, or at least spray free.
Yeah, trying to keep down the food miles on everything. So on top of the porridge, we then have LSA, which is really good for managing heart health. We have pumpkin seeds, we have hemp seeds, and we have pecan nuts because they're sweet and they come from a local grower. And then
what are the hemp seeds good for? Do you remember?
I think it's omega-3 and omega-6, and they may say something about an omega-9. I'm not sure if that's true though. But they're incredibly healthy as well. And then we have that. So Natalie and I have an almond milk, an unsweetened almond milk, because we don't eat a lot of meat, but it's fortified with B group vitamins and iron. So it makes sure that we get those nutrients as well, which are the B group vitamins and the iron are quite difficult to get if you don't eat a lot of meat. And so the children then have muesli. So one of our son's likes to make his own muesli, or if he's feeling energetic, he'll toast some granola. And they then have that with some fresh fruits, some bananas, or we kind of alternate on the fresh fruit. So we've usually always got bananas, and then we might have pawpaw or red papaya, and then custard apple. And then being winter, I've been making a compote of stewed apple, into which I throw some rhubarb, some cardamom, and some allspice, and a little bit of orange zest as well.
Which is controversial.
The orange zest is controversial, yes.
Because the children sometimes think it is too strong or too bitter. But and what about, let's talk about, so obviously that's breakfast, and Daniel is, he's a king cook, and so he pretty much makes our lunch and our dinner as well. So I'm very lucky when Daniel's home, he will make baked beans from scratch or these spinach fry-ups, and he's very big on making sure we have the right nutrients. I do have a tendency, if I was home by myself, I'd probably just have toast with avocado or cheese and Vegemite, something like that. But Daniel makes these amazing meals. But we can't not include a little discussion about gut health, because this is another kind of a kind of inside joke, I guess, in our family, is that Daniel is very passionate about gut health. So can you share a little bit about what you've learned about that and why it's so important?
Yeah, I guess gut health comes down to, I guess it was a couple of years ago now when my dad was living with us, that I was reading a lot of books about self-care, and I guess, transitioning into a role of being the one who is responsible for the food and caring for the children. And so I did a lot of reading about that. And one of the things that I read, it was a book called Blue Zones, and it's about a study done by a guy called Dan Buettner, from National Geographic, and he studied the people who live to be the longest all around the world. And there's probably 5 or 6 different regions where people live to be over 100 or close to 100. And he looked at the common trends with these people. And I was really, really interested in this because as the person responsible for the food in our household, I really wanted to be certain when a new fad came along, or if somebody said, oh, you've got to try this diet, or you've got to try this food, or whatnot, that I wanted to see, well, the people who live to 100, what do they do? And it's pretty simple. It's just foods that are as fresh as possible, grown with as few pesticides and inputs as possible, and not a lot of meat. Not necessarily vegetarian, but not a lot of meat. And so that was one book that I read during this time. The other one was about gut health and the importance of just keeping your gut full of simple foods, simple raw foods, which keep the garden of bacteria in the gut healthy, which then keeps your body healthy. So in a lot of cases, the reason we have cravings for things like sugar and fat and other things like that is actually because the bacteria that devour that stuff that lives in our gut is in greater quantities than the bacteria that devour fresh spinach or apples or things like that. And so what researchers have found is that these fat-loving and sugar-loving bacteria send a message to your gut, which has its own nerves. They talk about the gut brain, and the number of nerves in and around the gut is the size of a cat's brain. And these bad bacteria send a message to that, which then gives you a craving that says, I need to eat something fatty, or I need to eat something with sugar. And so I'm obsessed with the gut health and keeping it healthy and keeping the right kind of bacteria there, because that then means that I want to then eat the right types of food.
And Daniel has, he's been making his own kimchi and sauerkraut, and our children, they're actually not, they don't mind it, do they? We eat that quite a lot with different meals, and certainly our 4-year-old, one of his first words was kimchi. So it's, Daniel is very good at keeping us all very healthy, and And certainly I notice a big difference in my sort of general health and well-being. I don't get those sort of 3 o'clock slumps when we eat the right foods. It's so important. So before you go, Daniel, I just wanted to ask you a few questions that I ask at the end of every interview. And these are the questions that I used to ask people on Daily Imprint. So it's just whatever comes straight to your mind. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about it. Just whatever comes to mind. So the first one is, which 5 words best describe you? And I know that's probably the hardest one to start off with, but just whatever comes to mind.
Thoughtful, motivated, curious, empathic, patient.
Well done. You passed the test. What's the best life or career lesson you've learnt?
Never give up.
What's your proudest career achievement?
Actually doing something that I'm passionate about and I really enjoy. And when I started my career, I thought I'd be happy doing any kind of business, but one that I'm excited about and that I'm passionate about is just so much better than one that I may not have a lot of passion for.
What's been your best decision?
Realizing that life exists beyond a big city. So we lived in Sydney I was there for 18 years. You were there for a lot longer than that. And a big city I think it seems to get its claws into you. And you just, for some reason, feel like you can't leave. And your whole life is consumed with going across town or doing this within the city or doing that within the city. And I just love living out of the city in the country. And we live near a small country town. You can get a park on the main street. People are unhurried. It's just fantastic.
Who inspires you?
I don't have an answer for that.
You'd say me.
Well, we do feed off each other's energy, so that's certainly true. I mean, there's lots of people I find interesting and inspiring. So, writers. I'm listening to an audio book by Seth Godin when I'm driving to pick up the kids. I look back at my history. My grandfather, when he came from Finland, was very inspiring in that he moved with his wife and then 5 children. And I guess it's not just my grandfather, because my grandmother did an awful lot too. But he didn't speak English, and they had arrived as migrants in Brisbane, and he had heard about Tasmania, and he rode a motorbike 2,000 kilometres on a country road to Melbourne, and then caught the ferry across from Melbourne to Tasmania to investigate it. And he just camped by the side of the road during this time, and then, liking what he saw, then rode the motorbike back, caught the ferry, then rode the motorbike back 2,000 kilometres back to Brisbane to collect his family to settle in Tasmania. And I think that's an amazing story of tenacity and sisu, which is a Finnish word which means having literally having guts, just having intestinal, just fortitude and just never giving up.
What are you passionate about?
Living healthy and my family and surfing.
Not necessarily in that order, or maybe. Which person, living or dead, would you most like to meet?
Everyone pauses on this one, don't they? I'd really like to meet my grandfather, Jack. So he came as a 20-something from Ireland and settled in Australia, and was a very, very smart person. And obviously that would have taken a lot of courage. And I'd like to talk to him about his journey and his history as well.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
To be able to have a full weekend of just having fun with the family, but responsibilities seem to get in the way.
What are you reading?
I'm reading Mullumbimby by Melissa Lukashenko. It's one that you bought, Natalie. I felt that I really wanted to learn more about how we treat Aboriginal people in Australia and how we view them, and perhaps change those views as well. So the first book I read recently was called Dark Emu. And as I said, this is the second one, and it's just fascinating, and I can feel my worldview changing, which is really an exciting thing.
What are you currently listening to?
I'm listening to an audiobook called Tribe by Seth Godin. I like the way he speaks and the way he presents his arguments. And there's, like a lot of these things, there's points that he makes and you think, oh, of course. But literally having somebody else say them and tie these threads of thought together is just really interesting and inspiring.
And finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
That it's okay to go on my own creative journey. I don't have to go to every single event on the social calendar, and I don't have to be the last one at the party. And
Great. It's certainly, I think it's that whole thing, isn't it, of being true to yourself and what you value and what's most important in your life. And I think that's something that I kind of feel more and more as well within my own life. All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. I know that you're not used to being on the receiving end of interviews, and certainly we've never done anything like this before. So you are a good sport for indulging me, but I hope that other people find it interesting to get a little bit more of an insight into how I manage to do all the things that I do is because of Daniel. And as I mentioned, he is such a great font of knowledge, and it's so good to have somebody like that in your life. So I'm really grateful for all that he does for both me and our family. I hope that you've enjoyed this interview. Please let me know, and I'll touch base with you soon. All right, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. I know it's been a little bit different and the first man on the podcast, but let me know what you think. You can send me a DM on Instagram at Natalie Walton or email podcast@nataliewalton.com. You'll find show notes for this episode at nataliewalton.com/podcast/17. And please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review. It really does make a huge difference to spreading the word. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast and the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded. Thanks again for joining me today. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.